Hello and welcome to an introduction to undergraduate study at Cambridge, presented by the Cambridge Admissions Office and Cambridge in America. Cambridge in America provides philanthropy and engagement resources for more than 19,000 University of Cambridge alumni across North America. Thank you for joining us today. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. Your microphone and camera will be turned off throughout. This presentation will have a Q&A following the discussion. You are welcome to submit Q&A questions throughout the talk using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Our speaker will attempt to address as many questions as possible, but time is limited. We thank you in advance for your understanding if your question is not answered today. This event is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the Cambridge in America YouTube channel. And now I would like to introduce today's speaker. Amy Robertson is a regional manager at the University of Cambridge and oversees recruitment activity for the Cambridge Admissions Office in North America and Australasia. Amy studied at the University of Birmingham in the UK and University of Iowa in the US. She has been working in student recruitment at Cambridge since 2016, and much of her experience to date is advising North America-based students and supporters on Cambridge admissions. She is here to discuss with students and supporters who are starting to explore their university undergraduate options and who want to learn more about the opportunities for studying at a world-leading university in the UK. We are delighted to have her here today with us. Please welcome Amy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much to Cambridge in America for that warm introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today. I'm going to take you through some slides that will probably take us to about half an hour, and then of course we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. So if you do have them, just pop those in the Q&A and I will try and get to as many of those as possible. But hopefully you'll find these slides a useful overview. So the types of things that we will be covering in this session, we'll be thinking about Cambridge as a world-leading university. We're currently ranked second in the world in the QS World Rankings for 2023. And so what that means to be living and studying within the kind of academic community that is Cambridge. We'll be talking about the excellent teaching and learning that is the kind of a big part of the Cambridge experience, but also the student kind of side of things, so student support, student life, and also thinking about Cambridge as a way to really enhance your career prospects. Cambridge is as I said, a world-renowned university, and we have a fantastic global alumni network, and our students are really seen as valuable employees irrespective of degree discipline. So there are lots of things to be thinking about when we're thinking about Cambridge as an option for undergraduate study. So that's the type of thing that we'll be going through, and we'll look at each little bit in a little bit more depth. But to start off, many of you are probably familiar with the fact that Cambridge is a collegiate university, but I'll just unpick exactly what this means in terms of the university structure. Well, it means that the university is made up of 29 undergraduate colleges, and these colleges are essentially a mini campus that provide a base for students. So students will typically live in colleges. Our colleges have an accommodation guarantee for a typical length of an undergraduate degree, which is 3 years at Cambridge. So most students will live in college or in college-owned accommodation for the duration of their degree. There are also many other facilities within college, so catering, so dining halls and self-catering facilities. There are also kind of recreational spaces. So colleges will have cafes and bars, and common rooms where students can gather in a more kind of informal way. But there's also many study spaces. So all of our colleges have their own libraries and study rooms. So college really becomes the center of a student's student life, especially at an undergraduate level. We'll talk more about the academic and pastoral supports that is available through the college system, but essentially the college structure allows us to create a really supportive environment at Cambridge. And ultimately, the role of the colleges at the university are to admit undergraduate students. So they are responsible for the admissions process at an undergraduate level, and that means that the colleges will be the ones who review the applications and make the offers of admission on behalf of the university. And we'll talk a little bit about how colleges come into the kind of application process as we go through the session. But essentially, you can choose to apply directly to a college, or you can make what we call an open application, whereby your application goes just to one college, but that college is allocated to you by a computer algorithm. So those are the two options, and as I said, we'll unpick those more as we go through. What does the university do then alongside the colleges? The university determines course content. So all students on the same course at Cambridge, you do have to apply directly to a specific degree programme. So all of the students on all colleges will be attending the same lectures and learning the same content of their chosen subject. This means they'll be attending seminars, practicals, and lab work from across the collegiate system. The university sets and marks examinations and also ultimately awards the student their degree. So the degree at the end of the 3 or 4 years would come from the University of Cambridge. So that's a little bit about the collegiate structure. Now just a little bit about the teaching that's available and how there might be some kind of differences between US institutions that you might be looking at, or your students might be considering alongside the UK. As I've touched on already, the typical length of a Cambridge course is 3 years. So this is a year shorter in most cases than our kind of North American counterparts. This is because, as I've already said, you do apply directly to a specific course. So you jump straight into quite course specific materials at Cambridge. And this is because we work on a focused educational model. So the idea is really at the end of your 3 years to become an expert in your field. So you're studying something in quite a lot of depth at a very high level. And so that's really the purpose of a degree from Cambridge. For this reason, and because of this structure, we don't have any undisclosed majors, so you do have to select a specific electives or core curriculums. So all of the modules or papers that a student will be sitting will be pretty much directly related to the subject that they are studying. And so there is typically most classes will cover a subject area in quite a lot of breadth, but will all be related to that one specific subject area rather than moving around a kind of number of different disciplines like is more common at North American institutions. At Cambridge, students are typically taught by professors from year one. These are normally national or even international experts at Cambridge. Many of our academics are leading the field in their own specific areas of research. And so this means that this is feeding into the teaching that we are undertaking at the university. So students have really close kind of contact with professors throughout their undergraduate course. Cambridge has kind of 3 main methods of teaching. So we have lectures, so large group teaching, where a professor is kind of delivering content. We also have seminars, so smaller classroom-based teaching. And then we also have our unique supervision system. So this is one-on-one or one-to-small group teaching that happens weekly or fortnightly. That is really essentially a student's chance to have and continue an academic discussion with these professors who are typically experts in their field. And that supervision style of teaching is really something that is very unique to Cambridge and only offered at Oxford as an equivalent. And it's really something that students value in their time at Cambridge, having that close contact, having the opportunity to discuss ideas further that they might have covered in lectures, gain feedback on their work, or just clarify something that they maybe haven't understood fully in lectures, and so the supervision system is really central to kind of the unique Cambridge learning experience. Alongside any of the kind of formal teaching hours, independent study is a huge part of learning at Cambridge and in the UK more generally at a higher education level. So independent study is expected. Most Cambridge students will probably do between 42 to 46 hours per week on their subject. Of course, that won't all be timetabled, but that will be spending time doing further reading in the library, kind of developing their understanding of the subject more widely. And the assessment that's available on courses will vary, but we do still use kind of examinations quite heavily. So most students will be assessed through end of year exams, but there may be some additional opportunities for other forms of assessment as well. So that's kind of what the teaching looks like at Cambridge. And as I said, we really are kind of the Cambridge experience is really centered on this kind of academic excellence, which is facilitated at an undergraduate level through that excellent teaching on offer. We have about 30 different courses available at an undergraduate level. And as I've said a few times, you do apply directly to a specific degree program. So when your student is thinking about applying to Cambridge, it's part of the research in finding out about the university is about identifying the course that might be a good fit for them. And we'll talk about how you might approach that as we go through the session. But these are kind of the courses that we have on offer currently. We've touched on Cambridge as a very supportive environment, partly because of this collegiate structure of the university, which means that we are able to allocate specific members of staff to students in order for them to gain very close support if they need it. When a student enrolls in Cambridge, they get allocated someone called a director of studies, who is a staff member who oversees their academic progress, and they also get allocated a personal tutor, and this is someone who oversees the kind of more pastoral well-being side of things. So those are two dedicated members of staff for students specifically. There are also health practitioners affiliated with all of our colleges, so college nurses and mental health practitioners, anyone who is there to kind of be there as a more kind of immediate level of support for students within college. And there's also a lot of peer support within the college system. So colleges all have their own student representation through students' unions and through kind of specific representatives for international students. But there's also a lot of peer support in kind of a more informal way through things such as our college family systems. So when students arrive at Cambridge, they get allocated a college family. So this might be college parents, college siblings, who are often a mixture of students from different years and different subjects, who essentially kind of show students the ropes and take students under their wing to kind of help them adjust and settle into Cambridge. At the university level, then, there is also a plethora of support that is available to students from across the collegiate university. So we have a fantastic careers service. When we were talking earlier about employability, our careers service are really at the centre of that. They advertise hundreds of internships and work experience opportunities each year to our current students. They also run events and networking opportunities and things like skills and resume workshops. So really helping to prepare students for the world of work and giving them a good foundation for kind of thinking about what they might want to do as a profession, and yeah, are there to support them through their time at university and also after. So all students at Cambridge get lifelong access to that careers service as well. We have a counselling service, so free and impartial for anyone who might need that. We also have an accessibility and disability resource centre for students maybe with long-term health conditions or learning difficulties. There's the Cambridge-wide version of the Students' Union, which is all about student representation, and they will organise things like International Freshers Week, which are kind of welcome orientation activities for international students ahead of term and things like that. So the kind of collegiate structure of the university allows this kind of two-level system of supports that is really central to kind of providing that close-knit community that Cambridge is able to offer. So Cambridge is kind of a big focus is on academics, but we also have a really fulfilling student experience. Unfortunately, I'm not joined by a student today, so you will just have to listen to me talk about the student experience, but I will also signpost some useful ways to hear more about the student experience from students themselves. So we do have over 500 clubs and societies at the university, and because our students are typically very active in a kind of academic sense, it also is often that they are very engaged in their extracurriculars, and so are often members of a number of different clubs or societies whilst they're at the university. This covers things like sports, so sports at every level, so collegiate, kind of intercollegiate sports, but also much more competitive sport representing the university at a certain sporting level. Music and drama clubs, and also other interest groups. So pretty much anything that you can think of. There is a whole list on our website of the different clubs and societies that we have available currently. There's obviously lots going on within the university in Cambridge, but actually Cambridge is a really vibrant, fun place to be a student, kind of even beyond the university. So Cambridge has that kind of college town feel, being a medium-sized city, and is filled with pubs and restaurants. We have theatres. Cambridge is home to many festivals throughout the year, so not just music festivals, but we've got the Cambridge Science Festival, lots of different things indeed. And we also benefit from being just 50 minutes on the train from London, so very accessible to kind of the wider UK as an international student. Many students kind of wanting the opportunity to really involve themselves and explore life in another culture and country more widely. So London is just on our doorstep in Cambridge, and so there's lots of opportunities for really students to find that good work-life balance. And as I said, many of our students do get very actively involved in kind of the club and society side of the university. There are some fantastic resources out there to hear more directly from students. We have the website Inside University or Inside Uni, which is kind of resources put together for prospective students by current students, and they have chats around kind of different aspects of student life and things. Then we also have our Uni Buddy platform, where there are blogs and many other resources which allow you to hear kind of a little more from students around what their experience of Cambridge has been. So I do encourage you to kind of go and engage with some of the more kind of student focused resources as well, to hear directly from students about their experience of Cambridge. So before we go on to talk about what Cambridge is looking for, I'll just touch on briefly about fees and finance. So we do have fees and finance pages on our website that outline this information, but just to kind of some top level information around kind of costs. So our tuition is banded into 5 different bands depending on subject, but this starts around $30,000 a year based on current exchange rates. So that's kind of your initial cost. You also have living costs, which would be kind of your rent, your food, those types of things. And it's estimated that you'd need a minimum of $15,000 for kind of living in Cambridge. Obviously, this is dependent on your kind of lifestyle and those types of things, but that would be a good estimate. And then a third cost to consider is college fees, and these do vary by college, so just we just encourage you to check college websites around those costs. So those are the 3 different costs to take into consideration. Financial aid is typically limited for international students, so we're not like US universities, and we don't unfortunately offer kind of big full ride packages of financial aid, although we do have some individual awards that might be given through bodies such as the Cambridge Trust, which is one of our main funding bodies, and even individual colleges might have certain awards that are applicable to students from a certain country or for a certain subject. That said, there are also ways that US students choose to fund their studies at Cambridge. For example, we do accept FAFSAs and 529 plans, so those are routes that many students use. And comparably, to many North American institutions. We can work out a little bit cheaper, especially when you consider you're paying kind of for 1 year less in most cases. So that's just some top level fees and finance info for you there. Now we'll just spend the next few minutes thinking about what Cambridge is looking for from our students and from our applicants. Well, ultimately, we are kind of looking for the brightest and best students from wherever they're coming from. So our admissions process is purely academic. So we are an academic admissions review, and this means that we are looking at academic ability and potential. So strong academic achievement, an upward academic trajectory, and ultimately an ability to succeed on the Cambridge version of the course you're applying to. So that is really at the centre of our admissions review, and where we do differ quite kind of distinctly from some of our counterparts, for example, North American counterparts that are looking at that more kind of holistic admissions review. So we are looking at many different factors, but all through the lens of academic ability and potential. So that includes some of the things on the screen there. We're looking for genuine subject interest. This is really important given that a student is applying directly to a specific degree program. And so we want to see that they are genuinely interested in the subject and already engaging with the subject at a slightly higher level. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment. We're looking for genuine intellectual curiosity and kind of a good kind of base subject knowledge of kind of those core kind of elements of a specific subject area. And that's where some of our subject requirements come in. For our entry requirements, we're very transparent about our entry requirements, which I will cover in a moment. But that does mean that some of our courses will require a certain core knowledge of students because they do dive straight into that course content. We're looking for capacity for hard work. As I've touched on already, Cambridge is a rigorous academic environment. We're looking for a good fit between the applicant and the course. So looking to see that they've identified the right course for them. And vocational commitment is less relevant to the majority of our courses, but for like medicine, veterinary medicine, those more kind of vocational programs, it can help to demonstrate kind of a commitment to the intended profession and an understanding of kind of what's required there. So those are the things we're really looking for. Things that aren't as relevant to us are students from a particular background, students from a particular school type, and those extracurricular activities. So because we are an academic admissions review, we do make the distinction between extracurricular and super-curricular. This means that extracurricular activities that aren't directly related to the subject you're applying to, so things like sport or music or drama, where you're not applying to courses in those fields, won't have a kind of strong bearing on the success of your application. We do make that distinction between what we call super-curricular engagement though, and we do want to see evidence of that, and I'll signpost to kind of what that might look like as we go through. But just that's the kind of main takeaway, I guess, from this slide, is that we are looking purely at that academic ability and potential, and we won't be taking those extracurricular activities into consideration in quite the same way as other institutions. As I've said already, we are very transparent about our entry requirements, and we do have kind of typical academic requirements for our undergraduate students. Each offer is made on an individual basis to students from the US, but typically what an offer would look like are 5 College Board APs, so 5 APs with a score of 5. And as I said, it may be that there are a number of subject requirements that are linked to the subject that a student is applying for, and those can be fulfilled with those AP choices. In addition to the APs, we ask for kind of a strong academic record in your high school marks, so kind of a strong GPA, although we don't have a specific score assigned to that necessarily. And we also look for a kind of high score on the SAT or the ACT. So typically that would be kind of 1460 to 1500, or kind of 32, 33 on the ACT, in that kind of region for kind of what we would consider a competitive score, depending on the subject area. So that is kind of what you'd be looking at for kind of a whole profile. Equally, some students might be taking the full IB diploma, in which case the IB diploma with a point score of 40 to 42 points, or and 776 at higher level with those kind of subject requirements fulfilled, might be a kind of equivalent offer. So these are all outlined on our website. We have some entry requirements pages, and you can also cross-reference these with our course pages, where you can see subject requirements as well. So happy to take any questions about entry requirements, but this is what a typical profile of a US applicant will look like for Cambridge. As I've touched on, we do use a number of different kind of elements of information to make our admissions decisions. So we are still looking at this in a purely academic sense, but we are using as much information as possible to gain a little bit more information about the student and make as informed and fair admissions decisions as possible. So this means that we are using a student's academic record, so kind of a student's high school transcript, essentially. We also look at a student's personal statement. So this is essentially the UK equivalent of the college essay, and is submitted via the UCAS application, the way you apply to all UK universities. And this is essentially a student's chance to sell themselves to universities around why they want to study a particular subject and what they've done to already engage in the subject area. We look at a student's school recommendation, so we'll typically require one school recommendation to be submitted via UCAS. We also might ask for some written work that a student has already done. And at Cambridge, we administer admissions assessments and interviews, and those will all be kind of building a bigger picture of a student, giving a student as many opportunities as possible to demonstrate their academic ability and potential to us. And those will really also just help to inform our admissions decisions and start to break down and separate students who on paper are all very well qualified, and give us a little bit more insight around their suitability for the specific program that they've applied to, and things like that. So then, to look at the application process in a little bit more detail, there are various steps to go through, and we'll just go through these one by one with some kind of top level information, but happy to take questions. And this is all on our website, so do visit our undergraduate study website for this in a lot more detail. Choosing your course is something that all students who are applying to Cambridge have to do. This isn't a Cambridge specific step. This is how admissions in the UK work more generally. It's important that it's something the student enjoys, and it's important that they've researched the course in detail. There might be many courses across institutions in the UK that have similar names, but actually study things in quite a different way. So researching kind of what the makeup of the course looks like is a really kind of key factor in doing that initial research. And of course, there are really useful pages on many university websites. But if you have kind of questions that aren't answered, then reaching out to colleges or departments or faculties with questions is always a useful next step. And keeping an eye out also for events that might be run at a department or a faculty level. So this is a Cambridge specific step. As we've touched on already, Cambridge is a collegiate university. And I indicated that you can either apply directly to a college or you can make an open application. And your chances of admission, providing that you are an equally well qualified candidate, are the same. So it's really down to whether as a student you want to do a little bit of research around Cambridge and the college system, or whether you actually have no preference, you are happy to be allocated to any college, in which case you might make an open application, and therefore, yeah, your application is allocated via a computer algorithm. So there are those two options. Things that you might take into consideration in the research process. So colleges are more similar than they are different, but they do have some differences. So things like the type of accommodation that's available, what they look like in terms of like their architecture and the kind of space that the physical campus offers. Also, some colleges might have specific facilities on site, others might have specific facilities kind of elsewhere. So thinking about the types of facilities you might want on your kind of doorstep in college. And also the size of colleges vary. So some admit kind of smaller cohorts of each year group and others larger. So thinking about the type of environment you want to live in and kind of how many people you want to, like whether you want to know everyone, whether you want to kind of be a smaller fish in a bigger pond. It's really kind of up to you. Instinct can play a big part. So this doesn't mean just visiting in person. If you do visit Cambridge in person, then obviously that is a way to kind of see the differences between the colleges, but there's loads of information online and it's really easy to get a good sense of the colleges this way as well. And so you might just be looking at different pages online and get a sense that one kind of stands out to you. That's absolutely fine. You never have to justify your college choice during the application process. So you can really have any kind of reason for picking a college. You don't have to have kind of what would be deemed a good reason for that. So that's kind of college choice in a nutshell. But again, we have some useful videos on our website around college choice and happy to take any questions around that as well. We do have a system of moderation that ensures that students are never disadvantaged by their college choice. So there are some circumstances whereby you might receive an offer from a college you didn't originally apply to, and that's called the pooling system. So that does mean that it's not always guaranteed that you would get an offer from the college you originally applied to, but most students will tell you that their college is the best college irrespective of how they ended up there. So yeah, happy to take any additional questions around college choice as well. As I've said, Cambridge does administer admissions assessments. So most applicants will be required to take some form of subject specific assessment, either before students are interviewed or kind of around the interview period. So just check the relevant course pages around what the requirements for the admissions assessments are. Some assessments have kind of registration deadlines, and so do beware if your subject falls into one of these, but all the correct information is available on our website. And the main takeaway is just knowing and being aware that you likely will have one of these subject specific assessments, and really they're designed they're designed really to kind of just be another opportunity for us to gain a little bit more insight about how you have a knowledge of your subject and how you can apply that to potentially kind of new problems, new scenarios, and again helping us differentiate between kind of those well qualified candidates on paper. So as I've said already, you do apply through UCAS to Cambridge, and we have a slightly earlier UCAS deadline, and this year the UCAS deadline is slightly different. So for those of you who may have been familiar with it, most years it's October 15, but this year for this upcoming admission cycle, it will be October 16, just the way the weekend falls. So that is kind of a new date for us all to remember. The main thing that you submit as a student through the UCAS form is this personal statement, is this opportunity to sell yourself to universities and cover kind of your interest in the subject, why you want to study the subject, what you've done already to engage with the subject. So this is where you will essentially evidence any engagement in the subject that you've had already. And we would say for Cambridge, this would need to be at least 80% academically focused. So really focused on that subject that you are looking to apply to. There is that room then for the 20% extracurricular that aren't as relevant to us, but for some UK universities, they might place slightly more emphasis on it. So that's why it's kind of there as maybe an inclusion if you wish. We're not too prescriptive about what super-curricular exploration looks like, but we do have some really useful resources on our website if you're not sure where to start. So we have some super-curricular suggestions by subject, which might be book suggestions for further reading. It might be podcasts that might be useful to listen to. It might be online resources that you can engage with. So do visit our website. The applying pages have that PDF that's downloadable. That's a really useful kind of starting point for super-curricular. We also have resources that are put together by university departments at Cambridge that enable students to think about their subject in a slightly more sophisticated way, more akin to how they'll be thinking about it at undergraduate level. And so there are resources such as My HE Plus, Isaac Physics, and I Want to Study Engineering. There's also Enrich for maths. There are also other things that you could be doing. So attending a subject masterclass or a summer program at a local university, or visiting a museum or an exhibition, listening to YouTube lectures or podcasts, reading journals, having a subscription to The Economist or other kind of magazines or journals. So the opportunities are endless, and we're not too prescriptive. It's about students finding their passions and finding a way to engage with the subject that goes beyond those AP courses or those kind of school high school classes. So that's kind of just some signposting of key resources there, but these are all on our website and more. At Cambridge, there's some additional forms you have to complete through the My Cambridge application. This is an additional test. This is really just some paperwork that ensures all the information we have about you is consistent. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're applying, and there's a relevant deadline for that. We might ask that you submit written work ahead or during the application process. This would be work you completed ahead of time as part of your schooling, and you'd be notified if you were required to do this by your college in advance. If you haven't had one of the admissions assessments around kind of before interview, then if you're invited to interview, this is when your admissions assessment would likely take place. Again, Cambridge does interview its candidates. So these interviews normally take place during the first 3 weeks of December. Depending on the subject and college will depend on how many interviews you have, but usually between 1 and 2. And these will normally be pretty subject specific and about half an hour in length. So that's kind of what to expect in terms of the logistics. In the last admission cycle, interviews were administered online, organised by each college. Kind of it's just what interviews will look like going forward is still to be confirmed. So do keep an eye out on our website if you do have an applicant who will be applying in the next admissions cycle. But there are various options that the university is kind of going through as to how those might look going forward. Irrespective of kind of the logistics of them, the kind of key things are the same. So we are really using the interviews to identify students who are well suited to the Cambridge learning experience, principally the kind of supervision style of learning. So that academic-based discussion that we spoke about at the beginning, the interviews are really designed to mirror that. So wanting a student to discuss their thought process out loud and to see how a student responds to being fed new information around their subject and how they're able to articulate their thoughts and ideas around their subject. So practicing speaking out loud is the best preparation students can do for our interviews, and there's lots of guidance online about kind of what they look like and also how to prepare. That's just some kind of key takeaways. In terms of the decisions, so the application process works between October and then January. Colleges, as we've said, are responsible for undergraduate admissions decisions, and students will be notified of this in the kind of early new year. You might be made an offer from the college you originally applied to, or you might be made an offer from a college that you were pulled to. As I said, this is really just a system of moderation to ensure you get through on the strength of your application. At Cambridge, most of our offers will be conditional. This means that essentially a student's offer will be contingent on their achievement in their final high school kind of examination period, usually the summer of their senior year. This does mean that our offers work a little bit differently to North American institutions, whereby you might have that more kind of unconditional confirmation. So at Cambridge, you might receive your offer in the January, but it's maybe contingent on a number of outstanding APs that you have yet to sit, and then also the completion of your high school diploma. That offer then would be conditional, and then confirmed as unconditional in the summer of your senior year once the exam results of that year are out, so usually kind of the summertime. So that's when you would get your offer kind of fully confirmed. Happy to take questions around how that works in a little bit more detail if that's helpful, but UCAS also have some really useful information around kind of what a conditional or unconditional offer means. An unconditional offer would basically be in the case that a student has finished high school and got a full set of examination results already and is maybe applying during a gap year, something like that. Obviously, the other outcome is that you might be unsuccessful, but we always say that don't let this kind of put you off applying, because we can only offer places to those of you who, or to our students who do submit applications. So just a final slide on me before we open up to questions. So lots of opportunities to find out more, including our virtual tour platform, which offers 360 images and videos and content around different colleges and subject areas. We also have plenty of events in person and virtual throughout the year, both in the UK and Cambridge, and also in North America. So do keep an eye out for different things that you might be wanting to get involved with. As I said, our UniBuddy platform lets you engage with current students, including a number of different blogs that students have written about their time at Cambridge. And of course, if you ever have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation via email. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. That's it from me in terms of the slides. So I can see that we've got a few questions coming through. I will go ahead and open out to those. So thank you so much for listening so far. And yeah, we'll start to make our way through your questions. Okay, so we have a question from Penny. Are international students usually directed towards the same college or dispersed throughout the university? That's a really good question. So there's no kind of international specific college, or not a college that's necessarily more popular with international students. So they are fairly dispersed through the college system. So yeah, we don't have any kind of quotas or set numbers that we admit for international students, with the exception of our medicine program. So it really is just down to a student's personal preference around which college they like the look of, and that kind of determines where they end up if they're kind of choosing to apply directly. So yeah, they're fairly well dispersed. Certain colleges might have slightly larger international student populations that you should be able to find out on our website, but there's not a really stark difference in those. Another question from Penny: does taking the SAT or the ACT multiple times reduce the chances of acceptance? It really depends on the circumstances around these retakes, but typically Cambridge doesn't love to see tons of retakes, just because obviously if a student's having to have kind of multiple attempts to get the result they're looking for, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will find our courses super straightforward and easy. So obviously if there are extenuating circumstances, that's absolutely fine, and you could notify a college of a particular reason for a retake. But if it's just a retake to get a slightly better score, that's generally kind of not looked at, it's not preferred, I guess. So hopefully that answers your question there. Yes, so a question around the conditional offers. So I'll just elaborate a little bit more on that. So the question is, does Cambridge offer conditional offers to students taking AP classes in their last year of high school? If this is the case, how does that work alongside most American acceptances deadlines that are before the release of the AP scores? So yes, unfortunately, the timeline with kind of Cambridge's offers and kind of deadline day in the US doesn't quite line up. And so basically the kind of top line is that Cambridge doesn't have the same kind of deposits required or legal requirements around holding an offer elsewhere. So most US students may hold an offer from Cambridge, but also hold an offer in the US. Obviously, we recommend students doing their own research around kind of what the kind of legal implications from the kind of US institution that they are kind of engaging with and kind of holding a place at is. But from our perspective, we don't have any kind of rules around we must be the only institution where you hold an offer. That means that many students might kind of hold offers in both locations. If Cambridge is a student's first choice, but actually they're very keen on going to the UK in general, what happens is through the UCAS system, they will typically choose Cambridge as their first choice, and there's normally a deadline in the spring for saying, yes, Cambridge is my first choice, providing I get the kind of AP scores that I'm predicted. But there will also typically be students will have a second choice university. So you can apply to up to 5 university choices through UCAS. And these second choice universities would probably somewhere that has a slightly lower AP requirements that essentially you're more likely to achieve. If, for example, something goes wrong with your Cambridge kind of requirements, if you missed your Cambridge offer, you would typically automatically be confirmed at that, what we call an insurance choice. So if a student is set on going to the UK, then there's plenty of opportunities for them to have to hold 2 offers and essentially be automatically confirmed at another university place if they were to miss out on their Cambridge requirements. But it's a little bit complex, and it requires a little bit of kind of keeping a hand in both pots, I guess, for now. But hopefully that kind of helps to generally answer your question. But if you have follow-up questions, feel free to drop me an email or ask in the chat. Still coming through thick and fast, so I will thank you for your questions. I'll keep answering them for the next 10 minutes. A question from Shandy: is IB considered more desirable, equivalent, or less than an AP course load? So we accept both qualification routes. So IB is a little bit more straightforward in the sense that if a student is doing a full IB diploma, they don't have to have the kind of standardized testing requirements. So they don't need to present an SAT score or an ACT score. But we absolutely accept that pathway of high school diploma plus APs plus SAT or ACT. So it's really just whichever suits the student and the background, educational background they're coming from. Both are absolutely acceptable routes, providing that a student is fulfilling the subject requirements that we are asking for with those either IB higher levels or the College Board AP classes. So hopefully that helps to answer your question. Thank you. There's a question, will you hold another webinar about grad school? Yes, we've got a webinar on Thursday about graduate study options at Cambridge. So similar, a few slides and then some questions about graduate options. So do register for that if you're interested. And there's also various other opportunities to learn more at grad events and things throughout the year. So yeah, do sign up to those and just check our postgraduate study website if you want to know more about graduate study options. Another question, can you specify a preferred college while leaving your application open to other colleges? The short answer is no. So a student will just apply to one college, or basically each college just receives one application from a student. There is no way for you to say, oh, this is my first choice college, but I would be happy at any, and then basically one college just reviews an application. Obviously, the pooling system does mean that sometimes an application is opened up to other colleges. So basically with the pooling system, if a student is deemed a strong applicant, but a college is particularly oversubscribed in that specific subject for that year, a college might say to other colleges, we believe this is a really strong applicant. Do you want to have a look at their application and offer them a place in place of someone who applied directly to you, but is a weaker applicant? So in the initial stages, an applicant does just have to either applies direct or is allocated to one specific college, and that one college will be the sole reviewer of the application. So a student can't open their application up to colleges, but colleges have that function to invite other colleges to review that application if they don't have space, but are still think that the applicant is worthy of an offer of admission. Thank you. So someone has asked, when is the deadline for applications? Month the application has to be submitted for the following academic year. So yes, for applications for 2024 entry, so term starts at Cambridge in October. So for October 2024 entry, you'd be looking at submitting an application by October 16, 2023. So this fall, essentially, for the following fall enrolment. And someone's asked about this, can this recording be viewed later? Yes, so we appreciate that many students are in school. Given the time difference, we tried to make it work on both sides of the Atlantic, but yes, absolutely, the recording will be posted on the Cambridge in America YouTube page. So yeah, you can absolutely watch it again. And there will be kind of repeats of similar sessions throughout the year, in person and online. So plenty of opportunity to hopefully learn more, even if you can't, even if you weren't able to attend this session or your student wasn't able to attend. So Peter is asking, for overseas applicants, for example, Canada, is the International Baccalaureate essential, or how is this requirement gauged? So the IB is one option. For Canada, the entry requirements are just slightly different than our US entry requirements. So, but we would still be requiring either the College Board APs. So we basically ask for a Canadian high school diploma with a minimum of 6 grade 12 classes at 90%, but we then also ask for 5 College Board APs or 3 IB higher levels. So the IB isn't the only route for Canadian applicants, but it's one route, and then the high school diploma plus the additional standardized testings is another route. And that information is outlined on our website if you want to kind of review that. But yeah, it's not the only route for Canada. Question from Richard: what undergraduate courses are most relevant for a US medical degree? So we always say for students who are looking to undertake undergraduate studies in the UK and then kind of head back to the US for things like medical school, or even taking medical qualifications in the UK and then going back to practice in the US, to do your individual research. Different states have different requirements around kind of what qualifies as a kind of fully qualified practitioner. But obviously we have our undergraduate medicine course, so that's a 6-year kind of high school entry program that does qualify you to be a kind of practicing general practitioner in the UK. There are also kind of related courses such as a natural sciences program if you're looking for kind of more like loosely related kind of science programs. So yeah, have a look at our course pages, but medicine or natural sciences are probably like the 2 most closely relevant programs. So someone's asked, what is the situation around working in Cambridge outside of visa limitations? So at Cambridge, most undergraduate students essentially aren't recommended, aren't permitted to have kind of a kind of part-time work scenario, irrespective of kind of visa conditions. There are some exceptions, however. So whilst you typically wouldn't work in kind of like a shop or a cafe, there are opportunities through the university, such as student ambassador work, or working in the library, or working in the college bar, that do allow students to kind of gain a casual income. So yeah, there are some options, but typically most students won't have a part-time job unless it's like quite casual for the university. Are you allowed to change your major or subject after being accepted or attending Cambridge? So we obviously, because the admissions process is quite thorough and specific to the subject you're applying to, it's not recommended to kind of go into it thinking that you might change course or change major. But obviously, if you were to start your course and realize it's just not the right course for you, there would be conversations, you'd be able to have conversations with your director of study, with your personal tutor around different options and potentially options for changing course. Depending on the course and how related it is to the subject that you already are studying, there'll be different requirements around whether you can just transfer straight in or whether you have to take additional kind of classes or kind of drop back to year one in order to kind of fulfill the kind of base requirements. But obviously we're not going to make you stay on a course that you hate. So yes, there's conversations to be had around that for sure. Okay, we're just coming into the last couple of minutes, so I'll just take maybe one or two more questions and then I'll let Cambridge in America close up. So someone has said, do all of the 5 required AP courses have to be related to the subject of study, or is it 5 AP courses in general? So where there are subject requirements for one of our programs, so this is more common in kind of like the math or science-based subjects, then you will need to use the APs to fulfill any of those requirements. We always prefer that APs are in related fields if possible. So if you're applying to a STEM-based subject, kind of the majority of your APs being kind of STEM-related fields, or vice versa, if you're applying to arts and humanities, kind of more of them are, like you might have a calculus in there, but that you've taken history and you've taken English, those types of things. So yeah, generally related is preferable, but of course you might not always be able to find 5 directly related APs. So it's fine to have kind of a language thrown in or a slightly different AP, providing that the base requirement is using the APs to fulfill the subject requirements that some of our courses might have. Hopefully that helps to answer. Samuel asked how many international students are usually admitted each year. At Cambridge, we're actually very lucky and have quite a diverse international representation. At an undergraduate level, 25% roughly of our student body is international, and that rises to about 50% at postgraduate. So we are a really international institution, and that means that a good portion of our applicants are kind of from international backgrounds in our kind of each cohort. Final few questions. Does everyone get an interview? We don't interview all of our candidates, so there is kind of a pre-interview deselection process, so you may not be invited to interview, but we do interview quite a large portion of our applicants, so it's by no means the final hurdle. I think I will leave it there. I'm conscious that we are approaching the hour, but I can see that actually there are quite a few questions that have come through. So I will try and make a note of those. And if you have a burning question that you want to follow up with me, please just drop me an email. My email's on the screen. And if you have any feedback for us, just scan the QR code and we're grateful to hear any feedback on the session. So yeah, thank you so much all for listening and hope to see you soon. And I'll pass back over to Cambridge America. And thanks so much for them for hosting and organising this session. Take care, everyone.